Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am joining this debate. I wish I was pleased to join the debate, but I am not. I am one of those 18 parliamentarians who had their email targeted by this APT31. And to be perfectly honest with you, Mr. Speaker, I did not know what APT31 was. I think many of my colleagues do know that I spent a lot of time in diaspora communities. So I do know quite a bit about random, obscure groups that many of us don't pay attention to. But this is a new one even to me. And so I had to have staff actually look it up, what exactly this particular group was involved in. So this attack was back in January 2021. And by attack, of course, I'm not meaning a physical attack. I mean, this was a digital hacking attempt, pixel reconnaissance. And again, it's another term. I don't know what that is, so I had to go look it up. And it was, I would think, a sophisticated attempt. I wouldn't have thought about it. My colleagues know, other members of other political parties know. I'm quite paranoid. I think a little bit of paranoia is healthy in this line of work. I used to work for the Department of Defense as an exempt staffer for the Minister of National Defense during the Afghan War. I worked at the Alberta Finance Department as a policy advisor, where the security of budget documents was important. So just as a regular practice, I would do things like stopping my emails from automatically opening images, which little did I know in this situation it would help me out, because these images were the ones that contain 1 pixel that would upload code onto whatever device would open it. And in the case of my email account, Mr. Speaker, I did ask my staff on their computers to verify whether those emails were opened and were still there in my email account, and they were. And so this is one of the problems I have with what the government's position has been, and the Communications Security Establishment, the House of Commons Cybersecurity, who, as soon as I found out just a few weeks ago, I contacted them immediately to find out whether they knew or whether it was something I should do. And at first I got kind of mixed messages from them saying, yes, they knew about the investigation, and then they knew, but they didn't know. It wasn't really clear. There were 2 different emails saying almost identical things, using synonyms to avoid actually committing to anything, which I guess is typical. And I don't fault them for it. But when it came to the fact that my email had been targeted, I would have liked to have been told of the fact back in January 2021. And I would have liked to have been known because, one, I would like to have deleted these emails. I could have gone back to those emails several times and opened them all over again. And I'll even read the headlines for you, Speaker, because I have them. The first one was January 28th, more than 50 passengers killed. And it looks to be like a random story about a traffic accident in West Cameroon. Now, we get lots of different emails. There's not necessarily a reason we would open those. And it's signed off by David Arrow, and NRPO News is a domain name. The next is Brooke Singeman, China GDP. I might have opened that email, just a sheer curiosity of what an analyst might be saying. And the third email I have is Canada Parliament labels U.S. far-right Proud Boys group a terrorist entity, by David Arrow again. And these were over several days. So these were not all on the same day. Those are just 3 emails that I still have in my email inbox that I could have reopened for whatever reason while searching for another email, because nobody told me anything. Nobody did. I think it's both immoral and unethical what happened through House of Commons, CSE, and especially the Liberal government, because for all the talk of wanting to protect Canadians and doing right by them and ensuring there is no foreign interference, it's always when they're called out that they then start pretending that they're going to do something.
Exactly.
And what I've told every single diaspora group I deal with, and Mr. Speaker, I deal with political prisoners. I deal with people who have fled their country of origin, were political activists, they were in jails, they were on death row, some of them. They were democracy activists, they were journalists, perhaps in another country. I have one working for me who was a journalist in a country that has an authoritarian regime who shut down her newspaper. I have met journalists who used to work in Turkey who are on the Turkish grey list, which is their terror list. This particular individual has done no terror crime. All she did in her particular case, I call her the Robert Fife of Turkey. She reported on the fact that the Turkish government during the Syrian civil war had given weapons and arms and other means to ISIS and ISIS-affiliated jihadi groups. So these are people I meet with. They all saw the news that had been targeted. They all worry. It directly affects the type of work that I can do, the type of work I'm interested in doing, the type of work I've been asked to do by the leader of my political party as the Shadow Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. And refugees is quite core to that. Many of these people have applied and obtained protected person status in Canada. So this is, and I read your ruling, Speaker, this is, like you said, material to the type of work that I do. So when the government claims that they're doing enough, no, they're not doing enough. And the fact that nobody on the Liberal benches in the front cabinet, especially those responsible for administering CSIS and CSE, none of those people thought they should warn these 18 parliamentarians, including myself, including my colleague from Interlake, the member for Sherwood Park for Saskatchewan, the member for Calgary, Midnapore. There's several of us, and there are members of the Liberal Party. The member for Scarborough-Guildwood is one of the co-chairs of the IPAC group. We were specifically targeted for that work. But it is immoral. It's unethical. When I then turn around to the diaspora groups, what I'm starting to hear the chatter is, if they won't protect you, Tom, if they won't protect a member of parliament or a senator, what chance do they have? No wonder they're self-censoring and so scared to speak out on things that are going on in a country of origin, but also about foreign agents in Canada who are interfering with their rights to free speech as free Canadian citizens in our own country. And now they're afraid because they look at us. Many of us are human rights advocates. We do pro-democracy work. We help these groups organize. We give them ideas how to lobby and advocate for things that they care about, important issues. They then say, well, if I send you the email, is it actually protected? Will you protect my identity? I have had meetings, Mr. Speaker, where members of the public ask me to turn off my phones and then put them away. I mean, shut them down and put them away. And I know why they're doing this, because they are concerned that persons can easily tap into these devices, which are generally unsecured, and then they can turn on the microphones on devices. There is a reason why in our caucus rooms, we do not bring our devices into the room, and they're left in those little metal cabinets, whatever they're called. And we roll them in and roll them out all the time. I remember as caucus chair trying to convince my colleagues to leave their devices behind is very difficult. I see some of them nodding, they admit to it, how difficult it is for them to be kept away from the devices. But especially in the case with APT31, I started to go look, and the member for Selkirk Interlake before me kind of started to go into who this group was, because I was interested by this. And there is a $10 million reward for 7 of them on the U.S. Department of State Diplomatic Security Service Reward for Justice. It has 7 persons listed on it. It says these hackers have helped China's Ministry of State Security conduct malicious cyber operations against U.S. critical infrastructure through its front company, Wuhan Shaoruji Science and Technology Company in Wuhan. They're part of a group of China state-sponsored intelligence officers and contract hackers known in the cybersecurity community as APT31. Again, news to me. I'd like to have known what APT31. And they're not just contract hackers, they're China state-sponsored intelligence officers. If you have information on these China hackers, Wuhan, APT31, also known as Zirconium, Violet, Typhoon, Judgment Panda, and Altair, or associated individuals or entities, send it to us via our Tor-based tip line below. You may be eligible for a reward or relocation. Again, this is not just your random group of hackers in your mom's basement. That's what I would say. So when CSE, House of Common Security, the cybersecurity people, CSIS, the government, the public safety minister, the prime minister, and everybody else seems to claim like, well, we told somebody, that should be good enough. They have a moral and ethical responsibility to inform the parliamentarians directly, beyond what the law says, both for our personal protection, both for the protection of people that we deal with. Because what they're essentially saying is you are on your own. You're on your own. If someone finds out later on, then we'll tell you. Then we'll say, oh yeah, whoopsie doodle. Yeah, true. There was an attempted hack. It's not enough to say that the hack wasn't successful. We're being targeted. That's the problem. Like, I'm sure our digital infrastructure, the cybersecurity infrastructure for the House of Commons is strong. It is good enough. I remember trying to get Zoom used right after the pandemic shutdowns had begun, and our caucus was the first one to go on Zoom. And I remember the cybersecurity people telling us, no, you must send your signals through a House of Commons server based in Canada. And so we waited patiently the 3 days they asked us to do that, so that we could actually host a meeting of the Conservative caucus right when the shutdowns began across the country. So I trust them in that security infrastructure. What I have a problem with is the fact that we were targeted and not told back in 2021. And I had to be told by a foreign government. It's the Americans. So oftentimes, because they're our cousins, they're almost part of North American security infrastructure. I studied in America. I actually have, and I know a few of my colleagues look up my bio because why would you do that? I have a concentration in counterterrorism in the Department of Homeland Security. It's just a personal interest area, but mine is not focused on digital cybersecurity, to be honest. Again, so this is why I didn't know. These particular individuals, again, it's not just a random group of hackers doing it for fun or doing it for money. These are intelligence officers. That is what the US State Department says. I had to find out from a foreign government telling the FBI, telling a parliamentary group that I belong to, and sign off on letters, listen to what the analysts have to say, get information from them, share information with them. I had to find out from a foreign government that I was being targeted, like openly targeted. And I have been criticized by foreign governments before. Like famously, about 2 years ago, I was criticized in Pakistan's National Assembly for raising very simple questions in the House here about a $50,000 taxpayer-paid trip by a certain chief of defense staff in the Pakistani military. Highly unpopular, very popular in my riding though, because I have a lot of my fellow Muhajirs and Sindhis who are highly persecuted. So I did it on their behalf, and they deserve to know. But now they're going to come to me and ask me, Tom, is what we tell you protected? Are you protected? Can you guarantee to us what we pass on to you in your email, digital files, and your personal security in your offices? Is it protected? So I worry because I worry for them. And so there is a great Yiddish proverb. I never miss an opportunity to share them. I know members wait for them. But if we take the Prime Minister's words and the Public Safety Minister's words and CAC and CSIS, if their words were a stick, I could not even lean on it. It's a great Yiddish proverb. It is so true in this situation. Because the claim has been in the newspapers that because it wasn't successful, we didn't need to know. And I have it in the complete reverse. Because we were targeted, we didn't just deserve to know. They were morally obliged to tell us and ethically obliged to tell us. Whoever found out should have told us, because for 3 years, we could have adjusted our behavior. Correct. We could have changed the way we did things. We could have turned around and told the diaspora community leaders, groups that we're working on petitions with, letters, that we're starting campaigns to rescue political prisoners in our countries, that maybe we should do it a different way. Some of us travel to regions of the world that are dangerous, like Ukraine. Some of us traveled to Iraq just a few years ago. Not exactly the safest region to travel to generally. I found on the ground it was very safe. I would have liked to know, had I been targeted by, say, an Iranian-based hacker group that works for the Islamic regime, if I had been in the region. But now I have to work under the assumption that even if I was targeted, if the target wasn't successful in hacking into my emails or hacking into my personal digital files and any of my social media accounts, that because it wasn't successful, I could be the target of one of these espionage attempts, hacker attempts. And there are many of us who work with these types of individuals. So just because we know about APT31, thanks to the FBI, thanks to IPAC, thanks to the US State Department, not thanks to our government, now we got to wonder, are we individually, because of the work that we do, targeted by another foreign regime? The member for Selkirk Interlake talked about the work he does on behalf of the Canadian Ukrainian community. He's spoken out repeatedly against the Kremlin. If there was a Russian hacker group, of which they have many, and they are renowned in the Kremlin for both operating state-sponsored groups, but also paying contract hackers, that if he were to be targeted, nobody would tell him unless it was successful. If it's successful, then he would likely know about it. Which then kind of like, you see where this is going now. So this doesn't make any sense. The government's position makes no sense. So Speaker, in your ruling, you said that this matter was in fact a prima facie violation of our privilege. I knew that from the moment it happened it would be the case. I'm very glad that you ruled that way. I'm glad that the member for Sherwood Park for Saskatchewan brought it to your attention and made a very cogent case on why we should be protected. But I want to bring up another fact, that this actually did happen in Belgium as well. This is not APT31's first attempt. The APT31 is renowned. APT40 is another group that's also done it repeatedly against others. So it's not just IPAC members. So I'm going to draw your attention to one particular group that was targeted in Belgium. It was a series of politicians, including the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister of that country, who was targeted, one Foreign Affairs Minister, and several parliamentarians were also targeted by APT31 in about the same timelines as we were. And in that particular country, they were also not told. In Belgium, they all had to go public and shame their government in that situation. As far as I know, in this particular attack, I think only Finland and one other, I believe, Baltic state informed their legislators that they were victims of such an attack. But then again, they're also much more used to it. They are right next door to the Kremlin and the Russian Federation, which makes it their business to be in all of our business. Because they want to know what emails we're exchanging. They want to know the people we're meeting with. They want to know what devices that we're using as well. So this is the problem that I have with how this has been handled by the government, with their claim that they're doing enough, that they've introduced this new process. Those 5 members, again, like I said, was the former Prime Minister, the Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Vice Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Belgium-Taiwan Friendship Group, a member of the EU Foreign Affairs Committee. Now, I have the declaration in French speaker, so I'm going to read it into the record. Déclaration des élus belges.
Belgian individuals targeted. It's confirmed that we have all been targeted by a Chinese state-sponsored cyber attack at the beginning of 2021. It was not an attack against a political party or a country in particular. It was an attack against all elected members who dared to defy Beijing's regime. We therefore unanimously condemn these actions that affect the heart of our democracy. During the past 10 years, China has been more and more brazen in interfering in other countries' political systems, including ours. Too often, these malevolent acts have gone unresponded. We cannot accept these cyber attacks against Belgian elected members. We need a response. We therefore ask the government the following. And then they have 5 points that they raise. And it finishes with these 2 sentences. Chinese intelligence services think that they can intimidate us, but we will never be quieted. We will continue to fight for democracy in Belgium and throughout the world.
This goes on. There's a case in New Zealand where APT40 as well hacked into legislators and parliament's devices. There's a cybersecurity attack that was committed in Australia, again by another state-sponsored affiliated group, also out of Beijing. So this is not as if it's like unique. This is another problem with the line the government has taken. They're behaving as if this is brand new. Wow, this has never happened before. That's the claim. That is a top-line talking point being printed out of the Prime Minister's office and sent to all of us. That is simply not true. Since 2012, since Xi Jinping took over the Communist Party in Beijing, there has been a steady increase of attacks, both in rhetoric and in actual actions, by various hacking groups, by various military organizations, and like I said, intelligence officers of Beijing targeting now 18 Canadian parliamentarians. And for 3 years, we were told nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I only found out a few weeks ago. The moment I found out on a Tuesday, I immediately began contacting the House of Commons cybersecurity. I want to get to the bottom of this. And every single member who was targeted should have a chance to speak in this House and explain exactly how this impacts their work. So it can become a permanent official part of the Hansard record. So that next time this happens, the Liberals cannot claim they didn't see anything, they didn't hear anything, oh, it didn't work, so you shouldn't be bothered by it. We were targeted by a foreign government because of our parliamentary work. That should be enough. It was immoral not to tell us, it was unethical not to tell us. Thank you, Speaker.